All right, to work row 1, I'm actually going to work it here over row 6 because this would be a repeat, just to show you how to work this one. So for row 1, we're going to turn without chaining, do a stacked single crochet in that first stitch, and this counts as a double crochet. Now you can work a chain 2 or a chain 3 to do the same thing, but that stacked single crochet will give you a nice even edge. And what we're going to do is work a double crochet in the next 2 stitches. And then we're going to work a crossed granny stitch over the next 3 stitches. Here's how we do that. We skip the first stitch, work a double crochet in the next stitch, and work a double crochet in the next stitch. That's only 2 double crochet, and remember a granny stitch has 3, so I go back and I work a double crochet in that skipped stitch in front of the 2 I just worked, so that when I'm done with it, you'll see that it creates this overlay. And I'm going to do a crossed granny stitch all the way across the row. So I skip, I work a double crochet in the next 2, and then I work a double crochet in that skipped stitch to cross over. Now here's a caution. I'm going to show you in this next one what one of the pitfalls of this is. You'll notice that there's a fairly big gap here. When I skip that stitch, it looks like I should skip this one, but that's actually where I worked the second stitch. So skip the stitch that's unworked, work a double crochet in the next 2, and then work the third double crochet in that skipped stitch. Now I will admit that when I work this stitch, I sometimes work that crossed double crochet in that last stitch of the previous crossed granny stitch, because it looks like there's a big gap there and it's hard to tell sometimes where you've worked and where you haven't. Just make sure that as you work across, you don't work into a stitch twice. So I'm going to skip a stitch, work my crossed granny stitch, and I'm going to do this across the row till I get to the last 3 stitches. So I've worked that crossed granny stitch all the way across, and I have 3 stitches left. In those last 3 stitches, I'm simply going to work regular double crochet, 1, 2, and this one tends to slant to the side, but that is a stitch, so we're going to work into that. And row 1, or row 7 as it were, is finished, and you'll notice that really wonderful pattern of the crossed over extended stitch that creates just a little bit of surface texture. For row 2, I'm working on the wrong side of the fabric. This is also row 8. Row 2, I'm going to start by stacked single crochet in that first stitch. And again, you can work a chain 2 or chain 3, whichever you prefer. And then I'm simply going to double crochet in each stitch across. Okay, I'm at the end of row 2, and I just need to make sure to work one more stitch in that slightly slanted stitch, and that is the end of row 2. and this is the wrong side of the fabric. All right, I'm going to turn for row 3. And in this row, I'm going to be working the front post granny stitch. To start, chain 2 or chain 3, or work that stacked single crochet in the first stitch. And in the next 2 stitches, work double crochets. All right, the front post granny stitch. So a regular granny stitch is all 3 double crochet, all worked in the same stitch or space. These are all going to be worked in or around the same stitch, and I'll show you how. So we're going to skip a stitch, start the granny stitch by working and in the next stitch, work a double crochet. Then I'm going to work a front post double crochet around that same stitch. So wherever I placed that first granny stitch, double crochet, I'm going to work a front post double crochet. And the trick here is to make sure when I pull up that first loop to pull it up to the height of a regular double crochet. That's the second stitch in the granny stitch. To work the third, I have to look behind where I worked that first double crochet. In the same stitch, I'm going to work the third double crochet so that all of them are worked in or around the same stitch. So if I turn it to the back side, you'll see that the first and the third are worked in that stitch that is the same one I worked around for the front post. To get to the next one, I skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, and in that next stitch, I work a double crochet. I work a front post double crochet around the same stitch, and I pull it up. To complete the granny stitch, I work a double crochet in that same stitch that sits behind the front post. And that's what that looks like there. Okay, and I'm going to simply do that across, skip 2 stitches, work the front post granny stitch until I have 3 stitches left. All right, once I've worked all of those front post granny stitches across, I actually have 4 stitches left. So that was my mistake, because what I'm going to do is skip 1 stitch, just like I did at this end of the row, skip 1 stitch, and then work a double crochet in each of the last 3 stitches. Okay, let me show you a little bit about visually how you can tell whether you've done this right. So you'll notice that all of those stitches line up with the middle stitch of the crossed granny stitch below. And in between each front post double crochet, there will be 2 double crochet from the previous row that look like they've been skipped, which they have. So visually, you want those to line up with the crossed double crochet, crossed granny stitches that are 2 rows below. 3 double crochet at the end of each end of the row, and you're skipping 1 stitch here, 1 stitch here, and then 2 in between each of those front post granny stitches. So for the next row, I'm going to half double crochet. So I have to turn, chain 1 and turn. I'm going to half double crochet in that same stitch and in the next stitch. Now remember, I'm working on the wrong side of the fabric in this row. I'm going to put a puff in this next stitch. So a puff is yarn over, insert hook, yarn over, pull up once. Do that 2 more times in the same stitch. Once that's done, I pull through all 7 loops and my puff stitch is done. Then I'm going to work a half double crochet in the next 2 stitches. And a puff in the next. All right, and I'm going to do that all the way across, 2 half double crochet, then a puff, till I get to the last 3 stitches in which I will work just half double crochets. So I'm going to do that across. All right, so I've worked the half double crochet puff all the way across and I'm at the last 3 stitches, and I work a half double crochet in each one of those. Okay, and that's row 4, sorry. This is the wrong side of the fabric. You'll see that it looks like, you can still see the puff stitches, right? But the texture is really on the right side. Those puffs kind of poke to the front, and you'll notice that here's your crossed granny stitch, your double crochet row, your front post granny stitch, and your half double crochet puff across. All right, moving on to row 5. We're simply going to chain 1, turn, and work a half double crochet in the same stitch and in each stitch across. And as I get to the end of the row, just be sure that you work in every stitch across. So you want to make sure that you work one in that last stitch. And that is half double crochet all the way across for row 5. Row 6, simply chain 1 and turn, and this time I'm going to work the half double crochet in the 3rd loop. So since we're working from the back side of the stitch, this is the front side of the stitch, this is the back side of the stitch. That 3rd loop is actually going to sit right underneath the top loop. So this is the top loop. This is the 3rd loop. And what that will do is push that top loop forward. You'll see it once we finish this row. You'll see that that pushes that top loop forward to make it look like I have surface stitching. So the 3rd loop, there's the top loop there. So it leans forward it leans to the back, sorry, which happens to be the right side. So we're working on the wrong side. And this is the 3rd loop here. So we're working on the wrong side of the fabric right now. So I'm going to work a half double crochet in that 3rd loop all the way across. Okay, so I'm at the end of row 6. I need to work one more stitch. You'll notice that the top stitch for the last stitch has already slanted toward the right side of the fabric. So that 3rd loop is actually sitting right on top here. Just make sure that you work into that because you'll need to have enough stitches for the next row. All right, that's the end of row 6. So this is what the back side looks like. the right side of the fabric, remember those top loops turn toward the front and create what looks like a row of stitching on the front. If you're working the strip for the Tranquility Blanket, you would repeat rows 1, 2, 3, 4 to finish the strip. And if you get to the end of that row, which would be row 10, or a repeat of row 4, and you find that your strip is not quite 5 inches wide, you can always repeat rows 5 and 6, these two, the half double crochet and the half double crochet in the third loop, to get it to the 5-inch width, depending upon how tall you pull your stitches. If you're working this for a full-size blanket, you would simply repeat rows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 until you get to the length of the blanket that you're working on. The pattern will tell you how many repeats of those 6 rows you would work to complete the blanket.